All right. Hello, everyone. This is My Two Cents. Thanks for checking out this live stream. I am joined by the Red Pill Dragon and Mag. We're going to have a discussion about something that's been brought up several times in the media recently, thanks to Miss Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. This is a myth that should have been put to bed years ago, but it seems to keep popping up, especially among Bernie supporters.
Just keeps rearing its putrid heading like the far leftist Democrat cancer.
Yes, and that is the idea that, of course, we should want democratic socialism in the United States because it's working wonderfully over in Norway and Sweden and Denmark. And if it works so great there, shouldn't we do it here? Or so says Bernie, or perhaps when more Bernie-esque turns, every other country in the developed world has a single-payer healthcare system. Why shouldn't the United States? So, I guess I'll put it to you, Red Pill. I know you originally contacted me on Twitter about we need to have a stream about this. What was it that brought it to the forefront of your mind?
So, guys, this whole thing with the Scandinavian socialism, now, we all know, like My Two Cents here said, it's been being pushed around by the far leftists in the Democrat area for years now. But the thing is, what we're now seeing it more happening more, especially with the emergence of the people like Ocasio, who I didn't even know she existed before she won that stupid primary. But anyway, that's her showing up here on the scene and pushing this dumb argument is why I felt the need to do something with this.
Okay, absolutely. And I will just say, I'm sure everyone who follows my channel saw I recently put out a video where I tore through Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's campaign ad that she put out on her YouTube channel talking about her 5 various policies. And I included a clip there from a discussion she had with Trevor Noah on Comedy Central. And what Trevor Noah specifically said was, he said, all these people on the right try to talk about Venezuela and Cuba when they're talking about socialism, but then they forget about Norway and Sweden and Denmark. Of course, the insinuation from Trevor Noah being that Norway, Sweden, and Denmark are in fact socialist countries. Well, that is a myth. They have all 3 of those countries do have very heavy welfare states, but when it comes to economic freedom, actually, on the index of economic freedom, right now, Denmark is number 12, Sweden is number 15, the United States is number 18, and Norway is number 23. So actually, in terms of economic freedom, 2 of those countries, Denmark and Sweden, actually rank freer than the United States. And I know there's a very famous quote that, especially when Bernie Sanders first started talking about this, the Prime Minister of Denmark made a quote. And here, I'll put a link to an article in the chat here.
Question.
Yes, go ahead.
As you're saying before that the only thing you're talking about how they're like very healthy welfare state. Well, I don't know if they're just as much as we are, but we have a lot of welfare within our state, but we're not socialists either.
We're not.
That's just something that came to mind.
Okay, yeah. Actually, I'm going to read this quote from the Prime Minister of Denmark himself, and then we're going to get into some definitions. But quickly, so the Prime Minister of Denmark, in response to the Bernieites continually citing Denmark as an example of successful socialism, he said, quote, "I know that some people in the US associate the Nordic model with some sort of socialism. Therefore, I would like to make one thing clear. Denmark is far from a socialist planned economy. Denmark is a market economy." Okay, so now here's where I do think it's important to define some terms here. Capitalism is an economic system based on the ownership of private property and voluntary interactions.
Transactions between people and organizations or whatever.
Absolutely. So in a market, when he says Denmark has a market economy, what he means is their economy consists of private individuals and private businesses that make voluntary exchanges.
Not the state controlling everything, which is what Ocasio wants.
Yeah, it is not a centrally planned economy like the Soviet Union or Venezuela or Cuba. But now here's where when defining socialism, I just want to make a preface here. I know that when it comes to defining socialism, there's always going to be some socialist out there that claims I'm misrepresenting socialism. But I'm just going to go with the definition of socialism that Karl Marx himself used. But no, Karl Marx, when he talked about socialism, the phrase he always used and that his followers repeat is, quote, communal ownership of the means of production. So in other words, a business, a farm, anything that's used to produce things of value is owned by everyone. Basically, the products thereof are equally owned by everyone. Of course, the problem is practically this doesn't work, because when Johnny decides he needs more than Susie, what are they going to do? Fight over who gets more? Ultimately, you have to have some kind of governing authority that divides the proceeds up, which is why socialism in effect becomes government control of the means of production, not communal ownership of the means of production. And you can in fact have a mixed economy where you have some elements of socialism combined with a market economy, which is in fact what Denmark and Norway and Sweden have.
They have socialist style healthcare and things like that there, which is stupid,
Yes.
by the way. But
Yeah,
should we talk about that now, or should we talk about that at a different time?
Yeah.
I don't mean to butt in, but there's someone in the comments, Night Shift 1000. He's saying I'm a patron, but I don't have the link thing. I want to clarify with why I'm here.
Okay, Night Shift 10,000. This is not actually the patrons live stream. If you would like to join, I can go ahead and shoot you the link. Since you are a patron, I will allow that.
Yeah, he asked on Twitter too.
Yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just sounded like that was important.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. I was not paying attention to the chat, so let me.
I am, so don't worry.
Okay, I would have taken a look eventually.
Yes, please, brother.
All right, Night Shift. I just sent you the link. All right. Anyways, picking up. So yes, a country can have a market economy while still having socialist type policies. For example, if like Red Pill just said, healthcare. If the citizens are taxed and tax funds are used to provide healthcare for all citizens, that would be a socialist policy that might exist within a market economy.
Doesn't make the country itself as a whole socialist, though.
Yes, exactly. If a country were to institute some form of universal basic income where they take money from taxpayers and redistribute and give everyone a certain basic amount of money, that would be a socialist policy that would not necessarily give the country a centrally planned economy. But here's the thing that people need to realize. The difference between the Scandinavian countries and the United States is that the Scandinavian countries have a much more expansive welfare state. But as I said, on the Index of Economic Freedom, Denmark and Sweden are both ahead of the United States. Why are they ahead?
Like market regulations and stuff like that, right?
They have far fewer market regulations. It is much, much easier to run a business in Sweden or Denmark than it is in the United States because they have far fewer business regulations. So the thing to note is that while they have higher tax rates, businesses can nonetheless flourish easier than they can in the United States because they don't have so many government agencies peering over their shoulders, trying to make sure they're in line with all these expansive regulations, which regulations really are the only people they benefit are the large corporations that can afford to pay for to comply with the regulations, thereby preventing new businesses from entering the market and snuffing out competition.
It's like corporate fascism, almost what we have in America currently.
Yeah. Corporate fashion, really
awful.
We still it would be appropriate to say we have a market economy, but
with a lot of corporate fascistic regulations put in place that are just borderline retarded.
It is. It's so difficult to start a business these days that many entrepreneurs just give up because there's so many hoops to jump through, and of course that benefits.
With this whole thing with the market, with the the free market index thing. Now for the United States, is that federal regulations only, or is that state regulations included? Because I know that varies.
It does vary from state to state. I'm pretty sure that when it comes to the Heritage Foundation and the Index of Economic Freedom, it refers to
Federal,
both.
probably.
Probably federal, I guess. But here's something worth noting. In states like California and New York, where there are heavier business regulations than in other states, many businesses end up like right now. Businesses in California are leaving in droves, and they're relocating to states like Texas, where the business
Where it's
regulation.
freer.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, looks like Night Shift has made it in there. Hello, Night Shift.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Everyone else
Hello,
good?
boys, girls, and those who sexually identify as Riley Dennis. This is Night Shift 10,000, and I am on my 2 cents a stream. How you doing, brother?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
Absolutely awesome. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. For everyone watching, I'll just give a shout out. Night Shift recently became an elite level patron, so he is currently the highest level patron, and is therefore doing the most to support my channel. So thank you very much, Night Shift.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to do it. You are awesome, my friend.
And I apologize. I didn't mean to leave you out of this stream. This is just this is not the patrons monthly live stream, but like I said, you are an elite level patron. So if you'd like to be here, I'm welcome to have you.
Yeah, it's no problem, brother. No worries.
All right. Anyways, picking up, where was I?
Companies leaving California in droves and moving to Texas.
Yeah. Many corporations are leaving California and going to Texas specifically because regulations in California are absolutely killing their ability to do business. Now, here are just a few things that are the case in Scandinavia that people like Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie absolutely hate. In Scandinavia, you will not find a country, none, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, none of them have a government mandated minimum wage. None of them, all of them embrace free trade. They do not use tariffs or any form or any type of protectionist policy.
Sounds like paradise to me.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Minimum wage.
Just
yes.
one thing. How much do you want to bet that California in a few years they're going to break off and they're going to be called the People's Republic of California?
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised.
Hammer and sickle, my friend. Hammer and sickle.
I would not be surprised. You know what I actually think.
Leave so bad.
What I actually suspect would happen first is their economy is going to tank like Venezuela's, and they will demand that the federal government bail them out.
No doubt.
Well, from what I've heard, apparently are like because of with my dad being in construction, when I know I've heard him talk about him with certain conversations that the economy is like booming right now with construction right now. Lots of different stuff is being built, but he's with a large corporation himself, so I don't really know. But apparently the economy in California is really booming right now, or at least in the Bay Area. So, but they say it's like that's not going to last very long.
Okay. Yes, and we're about to get to the fact that even the system that they have in Scandinavia is unsustainable. But one other point I'd like to make, another thing, school choice. In Sweden, you might say they have government-assisted education in that the Swedish government provides vouchers to families. As families with children receive a certain amount of money that they are allowed to spend to send their children to private for-profit schools. So there is a sense in which the government does attempt to subsidize education, but families are allowed to pick which school they go to, and those schools are looking to make a profit, which of course improves education substantially because all the private schools know they have to provide
for people to go there.
Exactly. They have to provide the highest quality education.
School sucks, no one's going to want to go there. It's that simple.
Yeah, exactly. For the lowest possible price. And the only way they make a profit is doing that. So nonetheless, we can see these countries have all kinds of policies in place that Bernie and Ocasio-Cortez and all these democratic socialists absolutely despise. So it is absolutely a mistake to say that Denmark, Sweden, and Norway are socialist countries. Now, we do get to the question, is what they are doing working? Well, I would argue no. The only reason it appears to be working is because since they have a market economy with lots of businesses that are not regulated, the government can feasibly steal enough money to keep many of these social welfare programs going. But nonetheless, it is not sustainable.
Eventually, they're going to run out.
Yeah, eventually they're going to run out. Now, I'm going to post another link here in the chat. Just a second.
Well, it's basically the Scandinavian countries. They're basically it's socialism that's kind of riding on the coattails of capitalism, which is really like the only way that can actually work is if it does.
Well, I mean,
Riding
Marx
coattails.
himself kind of did that in a way, so that's not
Absolutely.
too surprising.
Mhm.
Absolutely, I'm fully aware of that. I mean, it's really the only way that socialism actually does appear to work is if it rides on the coattails of capitalism. which
Yes,
is
and it
actually
always
sad.
it always looks like it's working at first because the
Yeah.
government steals money that was produced under a market economy. They spend it, and of course, when you first spend it, it looks like it's working. Problem is, all those businesses you stole from now say, "Hey, I'm not going to work this hard next time around because why should I? The government's just going to take the money anyhow."
Exactly.
Then suddenly, the next time around, they discover weren't able to take in as much money in taxes, so they have to cut costs. Of course, with universal health care, I've pointed out numerous times. Let's use Britain as an example. The NHS is completely bankrupting Great Britain to the point that we've got cases like Alfie Evans, where doctors are literally ordering patients not to receive care,
To be
even though-
euthanized
yeah,
against
to be-
their will.
yeah, to be euthanized against their will just because the government doesn't have the money to pay for them, and they won't let the parents bring that patient to another country because they know if some other country's healthcare system is able to save him, it will expose the fact that the
How bad
NHS
that
doesn't work.
system is.
Didn't this whole situation expose him in the first place? Though they could have
It
just
is.
sent him over to
It's-
another place.
People are waking up to how retarded the system is there. So
Well,
Yeah.
well,
And-
yes. In particular, in Alfie Evans' case, the doctors apparently said the moment he's taken off life support, he'll die almost immediately. Well, they took him off life support, and he lived for like another 72 hours, and the doctors refused to even give him food or water. The parents were, I suspect the boy's father probably punched the doctor in the face before they finally gave him water. But
I
the
hope
point,
so.
Yeah.
I hope he did. If that was my son laying there in the hospital bed, I absolutely would. But
Same here.
but the point is, the doctors were wrong. He survived, a substantial amount of time once off life support, and I suspect that had he been taken to a hospital in Italy or somewhere else, they would have saved his life, and it would have completely exposed the British healthcare system for how inept it is. But I mean, among other things, the NHS ranked like lowest survival rate for cancer and other heavy diseases that could be
Canada's
terminal.
probably rather similar to that too. I know
Yes.
a lot of people from Canada come here for surgery and treatment for stuff like that because their system is garbage.
Exactly, and it's ironic because the United States does not have a free market healthcare system either. Our healthcare system
Fascist almost.
is one of the most heavily regulated industries in the country. Yet, what we do maintain is the fact that if you need treatment, you can choose to pay more to get it. If you once you have socialized medicine, everyone is entitled to treatment, and there's no way you can determine who needs it the most by who's willing to pay the most. Which of course leads to an inefficient. It's what every form of redistributed wealth always faces the problem of central planners being unable to predict where things are needed the most. You're going to have a hospital in one part of the country that might have a ton of a certain kind of medication that a lot of people in another part of the country really need.
The
But-
needs are changing faster than the central planners can keep up with it.
Exactly. Whereas if you just allowed rising and falling prices to communicate where the need was the greatest, they could get where the things where they needed to be when they needed it, not before some bureaucrat signed off on a piece of paper to transfer X number of medications to this hospital. By the time they do that, it's already too late.
And it's been proven before because I think I remember you guys saying that there was once a time where even like the poorest people can afford a certain amount of health care with them or like certain different health stuff.
Oh yeah, I believe that
with
was
the regular market.
Yeah, I
Well,
believe that
what-
was in my collab with Filthy Heretic. He was talking about how back in the 1800s, the average person could afford the healthcare they needed with 1 day's wage for a whole year.
Was that the
Well-
fraternal societies that did that?
Yes.
That was the fraternal guys. Okay, that was what I was wondering about. I actually was in an argument with someone on Twitter the other day, and we were talking about that. And I was trying to think about what that was. It finally came to my mind that I thought it was the fraternal societies that were doing that. And the only problem was I couldn't find the link for it.
My only question is, since like the 1800s, we've obviously advanced more in technology and we use more electrical stuff, and because we've advanced more, things cost more. So could that also affect how much like the healthcare costs thing? Because as the medical stuff costs much more to make or much more to manage and keep it running.
Well, there is a sense, and you are correct in that healthcare was not nearly to the level it is now back then. But what you also have to remember is anytime a new technology is first released, it's typically very expensive.
Then
In
it
the
gets cheaper as it improves.
Exactly. In the late 1970s,
True.
when I always think of that picture of the man making the first cell phone call. The first cell phone released in 1979 was the size of a brick, and the thing's battery only lasted like 40 minutes. Yet it cost if you wanted one of those, it would cost you $4,000. Well,
Now, is that money back then, or is that adjusted for inflation for now?
I'm pretty sure it was $4,000 back then. I'm not positive about that, but well, in any case, it was way more expensive than the average American was willing to
That
pay.
put a hole in your wallet for sure.
Exactly.
That's why many didn't have them.
Well, even on the medical care, you've got to weigh in the factors that the FDA and Medicaid, Medicare, they take things off the top. They take percentages off the top when it comes to like new medicines that come out, and they kind of force the companies to jack up the price, or they don't make any money off the medicine, and that is a huge problem. That's an absolutely terrible problem in the healthcare system. Literally to get a single medicine passed the FDA, you have to pay like millions. A company literally has to pay like millions just to get it passed, and that's even just past testing. So, it's not. If we didn't have all the regulation, all the bureaucracy that goes into these things, then medical technology and medicines would be far, far cheaper.
Let me add something to this. Now, in I don't know if this is the case all over the United States, but in my particular state, I think it's called the Rhode Island Blood Center, or whatever the hell it's called. We have a huge shortage of blood here. Now, the thing is, there's a regulation in place where the place can't pay you money to donate blood, to give blood. So now what they have to do now is
in a free market system, you would be able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And so what happens is now the company that does this, that manages it, has to spend thousands and thousands of dollars running tons of ads to basically beg people to give money, and yet we still have the shortage. Instead, because of this dumb regulation, they can't just give people an incentive to give blood and get rid of the shortage immediately.
Yeah, and I'm quick to add. Does anyone here by chance watch the television show The Resident?
No.
Okay,
Sounds
well,
familiar, but
I'm just going to put it out there. I've watched a couple episodes, and whether or not you like medical shows, The Resident, I think, illustrates really well some of the problems in the healthcare industry. There's an episode where basically a woman comes to this hospital where the main characters work at, and she's trying to teach the employees to prescribe services that aren't necessary. Basically, prescribe extra tests that patients don't need because we can charge the insurance companies more. Because, for example, like she comes to this patient who came in for something really, really simple, and she talks him into getting like a CAT scan and all these other tests, like even though it has nothing to do with what he's came there for, because the hospital can then charge the insurance company for that test. And even though it costs, like, in a realistic sense, it only costs the hospital like, I'm not sure the exact figure, but let's say $50 to run one of these tests.
They charge
because
the
of the way
insurance company way more.
Yeah, they charge the insurance company like 5 times, 10 times that much. And
like how a bottle of Advil or whatever from a hospital costs like $500, even though it probably costed $5 to make it.
Yeah, and of course the point is, people aren't stupid. The hospital knows that even though these things aren't necessary, they're going to make more money if they prescribe them. The patients don't care, because if the insurance company's paying, well, then why do they care? And then, of course, the insurance company cares, and the insurance companies don't want to insure anyone because they're having to pay out all this money. And whereas if you just had
your insurance company, though, the reason why healthcare is a lie is because you're paying with your insurance company. Say if you get into a problem, the reason why people have insurance and for in the future it will have things be cost less, but in reality you've been paying for all this insurance, so it's basically like a I don't want to say like liability, but
well, even then the insurance companies don't always pay out. I mean, they will shortchange you if you need like a major surgery or something like that and it costs too much. They will literally look to undercut the whole thing. I mean, it's so stupid. I mean, and one of the big factors to that is that the government actually does not allow insurance companies to cross state lines. I mean, I'm sure you guys all know this, But I mean, they don't allow them to cross state lines. They don't allow insurance companies to cross different lines. So the bigger insurance companies might be able to get in, or ones that, it would drive up competition. It would drive down the costs, and the government is not allowing that. And in a free
I
market
thought they
economy,
tried to
you
cut
have
some
that.
of those regulations some time ago. I don't know if it succeeded though.
I'm pretty sure it did not succeed, because where I live in Idaho, that is still not the case. We still have only local insurance companies, and they are really screwing people. Like, they're really hitting us, and it is complete BS.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. Okay, no, quick, getting back to Scandinavia, the next point I wanted to make is that
Wow, that was a heck of a divergent right there, wasn't it?
Kind of, but it's definitely good, and it illustrates how the healthcare industry, like any other industry, only gets worse the more the government tries to get involved in it.
True.
The lesson to be learned is that the government can only make things worse. But anyways, talking specifically about, I'm going to post a link again in the chat, because I think at this point it's already been put up there quite a bit by comments. But there's an article from the Mises Institute that was actually published in 2003 doing a case study in Denmark. And what it determined is, over the past couple decades, the population of Denmark has stayed pretty much constant, about 5 million people. In the 1970s, there were about 300,000 people that were completely living off the government. So whether they're a government employee who's retired and is now receiving a pension, whether it's their single mother who's receiving full welfare, basically the number of people that were receiving 100% of their income from taxes in Denmark was 300,000 out of 5 million, which is still a lot. That's really not great. But in 2003, when this study was conducted, there were now 900,000 citizens living completely off government money. So that's 3 times as many since the 1970s, yet the population was staying constant at 5 million. Well, go ahead and do the math.
That's more than 10% of the population living as parasites, basically.
Yes, exactly.
That's 10,000 every 10. Oh no, sorry.
God damn.
30,000.
Wow.
Is it 30,000 every 10 years? And I think I'm doing my math correct with that. 30 years,
35,000. 30 or 35,000.
Yeah, somewhere near there. Yeah.
But
every
you don't
10
need
years, it's like 30,000.
Yeah. You don't need specific figures to realize that expenses are exceeding income. If the number of people that are not working but are drawing benefits is increasing, but the population is staying constant, then that means eventually you're going to go bankrupt. It's the same thing that's happening with Social Security and Medicare. And the only option the government has then is to either increase taxes or cut benefits. And of course, they don't want to cut benefits because that'll get people angry, so they increase taxes. But as I just talked about in my video with Ocasio-Cortez, there's a little something known as Hauser's Law, which is that no matter what tax rates the government sets, historically, the United States, this is what the United States, but the principle would be universal, although I don't know if the figure would be exactly the same. No matter what the tax rates are, the United States never collects more than roughly 20% of the GDP. Which means, that makes perfect sense, because if you think about it, if you taxed 100% of people's income, well, then nobody would work and you'd get zero. If you tax 0% of people's income, then you once again get zero. That means that if whatever tax rates in between, there are only 2 possible options. Either it's zero everywhere, which obviously isn't the case, or revenues rise for a certain point, then hit a peak, and then you start to get diminishing returns and they fall back to zero at 100%. So as the government increases taxes and in order to keep up the redistribution, the wealthiest and the business owners start saying, hey, why should I even keep going to work? I'm making all this money. And the irony being, the more I make, the more the government takes. So they stop being productive. The government starts taking in less money. And then eventually it can't go on forever. The government goes bankrupt, the bill comes due, and the system collapses. So even for all those that are saying the Scandinavian system works, well, I think the major points are, one, it's not socialist because they're way, in terms of business regulations, they're far freer than the United States. And two, the systems they do have suck, like healthcare. And 3, the systems, even though it's been working for a while, it's unsustainable, as can be seen by the increasing number of people on welfare, but the population staying constant.
There's just one thing I want to say. One, it sounds like, basically to sum up, it sounds like socialists or socialist ideas, they work in the short term, but they won't last more than, say, 50 years or something. They're not
Exactly.
gonna last in the long term. And the second thing I want to say is, it kind of sounds like with also the same ideals, it's kind of like with lying. You have to keep feeding in that snake, otherwise it's gonna eventually eat you. I don't know how else to say that metaphor.
Well, yeah, it makes sense. You know, if you're being stared down by a hungry beast and you've got a pile of food next to you, you can keep throwing it food to satisfy it, but eventually, once you run out, it will eat you.
Yeah.
Well, it actually reminds me of a metaphor I once heard, and it had to do with spiders. You know, spiders are bloodsuckers, and it's like the government. Basically, these spiders, they like to wrap their webs around us. You know, in each strand, we could easily break each little strand individually, but then we get sat down, we get comfortable in our place, and the spiders weave their webs around us, and they start bleeding us, making us weak. And it's not great for us, but it's sure as hell great for the spiders. And it's the same thing with the government. I mean, if we settle, if we don't complain, if we don't, take action, they'll basically bleed us dry and we'll be too weak to do anything. And finally, I mean, what else is there left to do? I mean, it would be a complete collapse.
Oh, yeah. There's a quote that I'm not sure who the original person to make this quote was. It's been attributed to Reagan, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't the first person to say it. And that was, the same government that has the power to give you everything you want is a government that has the power to take everything you have. Right. And I think, and to all statists out there, whether you're a liberal, whether you're conservative, the statists, regardless of what political side they're on, are arguing over what the government should do with its power. All the while ignoring that same government that they want, they're happy so long as the state's doing what they want. But a state with the power to do what you want is a state that has the power to turn around and do what you don't want. And inevitably, no matter who you are, that ends up happening.
Well, at the end of the day, whether you've got a boot on the right foot or a boot on the left foot coming down on your neck, you still got a boot coming down on your neck, and it's all connected to the same body we like to call government. So. Yeah. My point is, tyranny sucks.
Oh, yeah. Tyranny absolutely sucks.
Yep.
Taking a look at a couple comments here. I see I am Cancer 624, but my evil corporatism aren't paying me $100, or my evil corporations aren't paying me $100 an hour. Thanks a lot, capitalism. Yeah, that sounds just like Miss Ocasio-Cortez, $15 minimum wage pegged to inflation. Well, if it's pegged to inflation, it's going to be $100 an hour before long. So,
well, here's the thing. Without government, you don't have corporations, because without government, you don't have subsidies. You don't have monopolization. You don't have corporatization. And it opens up businesses it opens up business freedom for smaller businesses to come in. And ultimately, you have more commerce going around. You have more monetary freedoms. You have more business freedom. And ultimately, competition goes huge.
One thing I have actually seen around a lot, I don't know if you guys mentioned this before, but you guys have talked a lot about with the business people. But one thing I've noticed with minimum wage, let's say, for example, you're transferring one job to another, and you've worked within, let's say, you worked within the food business. You've worked within the food business or restaurant business for like 10 years. But because of minimum wage, you have to be paid the exact same as someone who has just started, even though you have tons of more experience than them. That I find is baloney.
It is. Exactly. It is definitely, because it doesn't give them anything to work for, and that can even be put into like the bigger strata of our society. It's like, if you're paying a doctor the same thing you're paying somebody who works at Taco Bell, I mean, why are you going to put in the work to become a doctor? Why not just everyone work at Taco Bell? I mean, if you're going to pay people the same thing for every single job, like what Miss Ocasio-Cortez wants.
You can also spin it the other way around. You're working at a Taco Bell, for now, because you're trying to pay for college because you want to become a doctor. But if you're going to be paid the exact same as if you were in Taco Bell, then you're going to stay in Taco Bell.
Why
even though your dream would want to be a doctor?
Why go to college at all in that case?
Yeah,
exactly.
What really amazes me is, especially like on Senator Sanders' YouTube channel, which he puts out a lot of crap there. he's constant, like all these people, you know, Bernie doesn't actually do a lot of his own videos. He's got all these members of his staff that make these videos, a couple of which I've debunked on my channel, but they're always talking about how we need to get rid of the profit incentive. These evil corporations only concerned about profit. We need to replace it with the government who doesn't care about profit, but instead cares about you. Okay.
Wait, hold on. Back that up. Stop the presses. Bernie Sanders pays other people to do his stuff. I mean, he pays other people to write his things and whatnot, like to write his points and stuff.
I can only assume they're getting paid unless they're doing it out of the goodness of their own heart. But then
I've heard he only
pays
interns $12 an hour.
But he doesn't do it himself. He doesn't.
No, he
do it
does
himself.
not.
Oh wow, that's some irony right there.
Yes, of course. Well, the thing being though, under a free market, it is if you want to call it selfishness, fine. It's because people are selfish that they have to care about their customers. If you're not giving the customer what they want, they're not going to pay you. When you've got a government system, whether it's healthcare, whether it's something else, where people have no choice but to go there,
why should they give a shit about you?
Exactly. And I refer everyone to a video I made a while back called about the DMV. Almost everyone who's been to the DMV has a horror story. The people there are rude, they're unhelpful, and they absolutely couldn't care less about you. Why?
Oh yeah, earlier this year something happened with one of my license plates. I had to get new license plates, and it took hours to get it.
Yeah, I even just for simply because I had to take like a driving test because I'm trying to get my driver's license. I had to say, luckily I had to wait like 2 months later just so because I had an actual appointment. But I still had to wait hours. Even though I already had waited for 2 months for an appointment, I waited hours in a line. And because we wanted to arrive there early, we got there early. Oh, but wait. We forgot something, so we had to go all the way back and get out of the freaking line, then go back in the line. Then we had to wait for the entirety of the line again, even though I already had waited 2 freaking months.
Well, and that's kind of the way it is with any kind of government-run thing, like with healthcare, education, government-run. That's literally what you're going to get. I mean, and here's the thing about it. If it's in the public sector, they get paid either way. I mean, if you live or die, like, you know, in what do you, oh gosh, what am I trying to think of? Single-payer healthcare, Obamacare, basically. Whether you live or die, they get paid. But I mean, if you privatize healthcare, if you privatize health insurance, then they have a reason to keep you alive. They have a reason to keep you coming back. But I mean, in the public sector, they get paid either way. So I mean, what the hell's the point?
I just remember something. Isn't that kind of a little bit different? See, for like with I don't know exactly what you call it, but basically with like people giving out prescriptions, they can give you a prescription, but in reality it doesn't work as well as something else could. But because it works in the short term, they keep having you always come back, having you always pay the medical bill, even though in reality it doesn't really work. But they keep you always having to come back because then you get addicted to this pill, so you have to always keep coming back to the government, keep going back to the pharmacy and getting these pills. In reality, they're not really helping you.
Are those like?
I don't know if that was really relevant to this, but I'm going with it.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about opiates, if you're talking about like things like opiate addiction, I
was just talking about pills in general, just pharmacy drugs. Even like painkillers.
Well, I mean, I think you're pointing out to even what drug dealers do to try to get people hooked. They, give it out for free and then charge you outrageous amounts of money once you're addicted.
Yeah,
but that's not what I was referring to, but that is a good point. I was referring to the fact that they could give you something else that would really be actually helpful for you, but in reality, they're going to give you this other drug that's been super highly regulated, that's expensive, but they give you this drug in reality, say for marijuana, for example, that can help you a lot more.
If a doctor's office gave you subpar service because they knew they stood to make more money by giving you subpar service than by what really, well, I think, yes, there's always a risk for that. The benefit is that in a free market, if a doctor's office was exposed for doing such a thing and we had private healthcare where people could pick to go to a different healthcare provider, the moment that expose hits the newspapers that this doctor's office has been involved in this practice, all their patients are going to say, and leave, say, why would I want to deal with a scumbag like you? I'm going to go somewhere where the doctor's office actually cares about me, and he's going to be
Well,
out of business in a second.
The only
Whereas,
kind of sorry, I mean to interrupt me. The only kind of problem with that, unfortunately, there are some cases where people will like the problem with pills. Also, like even if it helps you or not, you do get addicted to them. You want these pills because they are seeming like they help you, then you can't get off them. So for those unlucky ones that did get trapped in there, you're gonna have to keep going back to that same pharmacy or someone else to give you those same exact pills.
well, it certainly is unfortunate, and this isn't to say that the free market can prevent bad things from ever happening to anyone. That's just not true. There is no such thing as utopia. And yes, in such a case, that person really got the short end of the stick. But what it would mitigate is large numbers of people having this problem, because as soon as it was exposed, like I said, that of course, then that practice is going to go out of business, and only those businesses that are honest and transparent and provide good services are going to have the reputation to keep the customers coming. Whereas I think a good example of how single-payer healthcare systems don't allow this to happen is like the VA hospitals in the United States. It's ironic that a lot of Americans are arguing that the U.S. needs single-payer healthcare, when in fact the U.S. already does have one form of single-payer healthcare, and that's veterans hospitals for former U.S. service members. And the huge scandal nationwide that took place several years ago, where all these VA hospitals were exposed with all these corrupt practices, horrible waiting times, allowing patients to die. Well, what, is the VA gone? No. The VA actually got more money because when they were exposed, they told the government, well, yeah, we need more money.
Let's just dump more tax dollars on it. That'll fix the problem, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Basically throwing more
always
gasoline
does.
on the fire. Throwing more gasoline on the fire there.
Yeah, it's fun. I don't remember what movie this was. When I was a kid, I saw some sort of movie where these two guys are trying to sell a house, and in the process of this one scene, a woman's hair lights on fire. A guy grabs a glass of whiskey out of a man's hand, thinking it's water, and pours it on her head. And then the flames just shoot up higher.
Were they hunting a mouse in that movie?
Yes.
Okay, that's like Mouse Trap or Mouse Hunt or something like that.
Yeah,
it was a really funny movie.
It was a funny movie. It's been so long since I've seen it that I don't remember, but yeah.
They hook up the vacuum to the septic tank and it explodes all over them. That was like the best part. But yeah, I mean, it is. It's basically like throwing, it's like throwing gasoline on a fire. I mean, it's basically this inept government saying, oh, we'll throw more gasoline on the fire. That'll help. Oh, let's throw more gasoline on the fire. That'll help. It just keeps going on. It's an endless cycle until you just basically force them to stop.
Yeah. I mean, that was the whole point of the video I did with Filthy Heretic. The government creates a problem, then says, we're the only ones that can solve the problem, and they do more of exactly what they did to cause the problem. So
that's like cancer right there, actually. Ironically, that's a lot like cancer if you think about it.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Mm-hmm.
So, are we gonna get back to Denmark?
Okay. Yeah. Well, anyways, I mean, I think
sorry.
We said everything that's. I'm just gonna my closing thoughts on Denmark. Anytime someone tells you that Denmark, Sweden, Norway are examples of working socialism, first, ask them if they even know what the definitions of capitalism and socialism are. Odds are they don't. But two, you want to point out Denmark and Sweden are economically freer than the United States, although they have more expansive particular welfare programs. It's only working. The only reason the Nordic model has lasted as long as it is because their market practices are as good as they are. And then three, even if you call it working, three, the systems they do have suck. The universal healthcare there sucks, and just about anyone. Of course, you can always find individual cases of people who say they love the healthcare, but there are more than enough people willing to report how awful the healthcare they have is.
You know what that is. You know what that is. It's almost like you're trying to convince someone that there's a forest fire, and then the person like points to one tree that's not on fire, and it's like, there's a tree that's not on fire. There's no forest fire.
Yeah, exactly. It is never a good test of whether or not a government policy works to ask those people that personally benefited from the policy whether or not it works.
Yep.
Yeah, and then final point, the Nordic system is unsustainable, and we can already see it's unsustainable. And I would argue the reason, like many other countries in Europe, the reason that countries like Sweden have been so liberal with their immigration policy is because they literally need the population is staying constant. They need more people they can tax to try to keep this sustainable. And of course,
But they don't tax, like, especially if they're like, say, illegal immigrants, because they're just having them pour on in. They're not even taxing them. They're just taxing more of their own
Yeah,
civilians,
their
putting them more in
immigration
a
system
shithole.
is just retarded. It's that simple.
exactly. They're letting them in, hoping they'll become productive citizens they can tax.
No.
They're
As
not.
we can see, that's not happening.
They're
Nope.
just sitting on their asses and leeching off of welfare.
Yeah, so they're only accelerating the problem.
Well, here's something I've definitely seen with well, actually, this is going to be a little bit of a tangent for me. I was always taught in school when I was teaching like U.S. history, the American dream doesn't exist anymore. But I find that's bullshit, and here is why. You can start off as just first immigrant, just first generation immigrant, has come from nothing, doesn't even know the language. I know from my own family, my great grandmother who started here, she didn't know a zip about English. Someone told her one day, if you want your family to survive, you gotta learn how to speak English. So she learned how to speak English. She taught her kids how to speak English, and she always cared about education. And the reason why the American dream is still true is because, even not for you, but a lot of people who come here is for your family. So you can start off as just a maid, and you can work up. Or, sorry, a better example, you can start as a low cashier at a stupid diner or whatnot, but you can work up to maybe having your own restaurant one day, or at least having it so that your kids can have a good future and going off to college. So the American dream is possible, but it is not possible under socialism. I just need to go on that tangent.
Okay, well,
Absolutely.
fair enough.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I'll just say that
All
people
right.
say that's not true anymore because it fucking is.
All right. Well, I guess if anybody has any closing thoughts about the Scandinavian issue, go ahead and share those now. Otherwise, this is probably where I'm going to bring the stream to an end.
I think we've said everything that I wanted to say.
All right. Well,
Same here, brother.
okay. I'll let each one of you give yourselves a shout out. Red Pill Dragon, you can go ahead and go first.
Subscribe to my channel, everybody.
All right. I will have all the links I'll put the links in the description once we're done here. Mag.
I have a channel where I make Minecraft stuff. Please follow me. I'm about to do a sub special on my channel tomorrow. Feature for that with you.
All right. And last but certainly not least, one of my newest patrons, Night Shift.
Night Shift 10,000. I don't really create content. I've been on here for almost 13 years now. I've been on YouTube for almost 13 years. Never created any content, but I'm loving being here, and I'm proud to be a new patron.
Okay. And worth noting, as an elite level patron, he will have the option to appear in one of my videos per month. So even if he doesn't have any of his own content now, if he so desires, he's about to have at least one video a month that he'll appear in on my channel, if you want.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So if that's another motive, and I will just put it out there. I always hate to have to do the little segment where I ask for donations, but as I've said, the past 2 months in particular, I've been hit really hard with ad revenue. Every single video I've put out has gotten demonetized. And as I've gotten, for this past month, I had about 75% less ad revenue than normal. So if there's anyone out there that can afford to even donate $1 a month on Patreon, that would really be helpful. If not, I'm always grateful just for your follows, like, comment, share, subscribe.
And you don't have to just on Patreon. You can also do it on like the super chats. That's what I have to do. So you don't have to just limit yourself to that.
Right. I got several options. Actually, I just noted it in yesterday's episode of 2 Day with 2 Cents, but BitChute actually created a tip jar, and you can now sort of Patreon pledge on BitChute if anyone wants to use that platform. Yes.
Oh, sweet.
Cool.
So, anyways, thank you everybody.
We gotta work on getting more people over to BitChute because this is just AIDS over here.
You know, that's true.
Brother.
Well, actually, I have a video plan for that.
Just a quick plug for BitChute. There are a number of people right now who are claiming we need a internet bill of rights. Let me assure you, if YouTube is censoring people, the last thing you want is to give the government more control to regulate the internet. Apart from what people like James Alsop might try to say, competition can fix this problem. When Alex Jones was censored, BitChute pretty much doubled its subscriber base within the day. If you don't have a BitChute account, make one.
I mean, if the government could stop giving them subsidies and shit, that would be great.
Yeah, it would be great. There is no way YouTube would be doing this if they weren't receiving government subsidies. I mean,
You can't turn away customers if you want to grow as a platform.
Exactly.
And the
So-
one thing I could say for BitChute is that it doesn't just have to be like just for people who are getting not just for political ones. If you're getting screwed over for your political ones, say if you're making like a gaming channel and your game accidentally shows a little nudity in it because that's games, YouTube will say no, but BitChute will say yes. If you like watching all this other stuff that YouTube will not let you do because there's a lot of people that are getting screwed over from this, not just political ones. They can go over to BitChute and they can do the same stuff there. And I don't know if you guys are making money on BitChute though.
All right.
That's just my little tangent.
Okay. Well, plenty of tangents in this stream, but no problem. They're all important. So thank you guys for joining. And that is my 2 cents. So take it for what it's worth.